Hello, imagine you're standing in front of a mirror. You're between 29 and 44 years old, you are smart, you worked hard, you did everything you were told, you studied, you tried, you built. And somewhere inside there is a quiet but sharp question. Why does it still feel wrong? It is neither a failure nor a tragedy, just something does not add up. You're not broken, but you are not free either. Today we are not going to talk about nostalgia, we are not going to talk about cassettes, street football, or the early internet, or retro consoles. Today we uncover the psychology, the one that formed in you unnoticed while you were growing up at the intersection of two worlds, the analog and the digital, while the world was changing faster than anyone could explain the rules. Because people born between 1980 and 1995 are not just millennials. They are the first generation that had to rewrite themselves on the go. And this left deep marks in thinking, in emotions, in relationships, in how you make decisions right now. 6 traits, 6 psychological patterns. And each of them is not a weakness. It is a code that can be deciphered. Everyone thinks that a generation is defined by the date of birth. Not true. A generation is defined by the psychological pressure a person experienced during the period of personality formation. The old belief sounds like this: millennials are spoiled, eternally dissatisfied people who cannot grow up. This is a lie, a superficial, convenient, but a lie. The truth is that people born between 1980 and 1995 experienced something no generation before them had ever experienced. They grew up in one world and they had to live in a completely different one. Childhood without the internet, youth with the early internet, adulthood in the era of smartphones, social networks, global crises, and the complete destruction of old social contracts. Work hard, get stability. This formula died before their eyes, and the brain, the plastic adaptive brain of a young person, recorded all this, saved it, turned it into stable behavioral patterns, emotional reactions, and ways of thinking. This is what we are breaking down today, not stereotypes, but psychology. Drop a like, subscribe, let us go. The first trait: a chronic state of in-between. Adam Grant in his book Think Again explores how people who survived a cognitive gap between beliefs and reality develop a unique ability to rethink. This is exactly what makes this generation psychologically flexible despite the internal conflict. A person of two worlds, you remember what it is like to wait for a page to load, to wait for a letter in the mail, to wait for a person at the entrance because they did not have a mobile phone. And you also remember the first moment when everything became instant. This transition is not just technological, it is neuropsychological. The brain that learned patience suddenly received an environment of instant gratification, and now you live in a constant internal conflict. A part of you knows how to wait, knows how to endure discomfort, knows how to play the long game. The other part demands results right now. This manifests everywhere in your career. You can build something for years, but suddenly catch yourself thinking, why is it so slow? In relationships, you value depth, but the process tires you out. In self-esteem, you know your worth, but the anxiety never goes away. Psychologist Adam Grant calls this state languishing. Not depression, not unhappiness, something in between. For people of this generation, this is not a temporary state. It is a background mode. But here is what is important to understand. This state of in-between is not a defect. It is a superpower because you are the only one who truly understands both worlds. You can think slowly and deeply when needed, and adapt instantly when necessary. The question is not how to get rid of this tension. The question is how to learn to manage it. The second trait: the syndrome of inflated promises. In the book Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me, Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson explore the mechanism of cognitive dissonance. What happens when reality destroys our beliefs? This mechanism explains exactly why the generation of the 80s to the mid-90s reacts so painfully to the mismatch between promises and reality. When reality did not match the script, you were told, get an education and everything will be fine. Find a good job, start a family, buy an apartment, and you will be happy. You believed it because people around you believed it, because it worked for previous generations, and then you stepped into the adult world and the script did not match. Degrees depreciated, the job market became unpredictable, housing prices skyrocketed, old relationship models cracked, pensions became a myth. And here is what this experience does to the psyche. It forms a deep, often unconscious feeling that you were deceived, not by a specific person, but by the system, the narrative, the promise. Psychologists call this a breach of the psychological contract. You fulfilled your part of the deal, and the other side did not. The consequences: chronic cynicism, difficulties in trusting institutions, constant fact-checking of information, skepticism towards any promises, whether from politicians, employers, or partners. It sounds like a problem, but look at it from the other side. You stopped believing blindly. You learn to think critically. You do not buy into beautiful packaging. You look for the essence. In a world where manipulation has become an industry, this is armor. The problem arises when this healthy skepticism turns into paralysis, when you cannot trust anyone or anything, even when it would be beneficial. Working with this trait is not about starting to believe everything blindly again. It is about learning to choose what to believe consciously based on your values, not out of fear. The third trait, hyperautonomy as a defense. Brené Brown in her book Daring Greatly shows, based on years of research, that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a source of genuine strength and connection with other people. This is exactly what people with a hyperautonomy pattern often avoid. I will handle it myself even if I cannot. There is a type of person you most likely know, maybe it is you, a person who never asks for help, because depending on another person feels like a threat even when they sincerely want to help. This is a pattern that forms when you grow up in an era of change and realizes that the only constant in a changing world is yourself. This generation grew up at a time when big security systems were collapsing: social, economic, family. The divorce rate reached historical highs, right at the time when state guarantees were melting away. The brain made a conclusion: rely only on yourself. And this conclusion created incredibly strong, self-sufficient people. People who know how to solve problems, people who do not wait for a savior, people who find a way out where others see a dead end. But this strength has a dark side. Hyperautonomy isolates. It creates an invisible wall between you and your loved ones. Your partner wants to support you, but you have already decided everything yourself, and they feel left out. A friend offers help, and something inside resists. No, that's a weakness. It is not a weakness to ask for help. It is a skill, one of the hardest for people of your generation. Psychologists have proven that the ability to accept help correlates with the level of psychological well-being more strongly than the ability to give it. Allowing someone to be there is not a surrender, it is a choice. The fourth trait, constant re-evaluation of identity. In the book Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl shows that a stable identity is built not on external roles, but on internal meaning, on what remains when everything external is destroyed. Finding this core is the central psychological task of this generation. Who am I if the rules have changed? You changed yourself not once, but many times. You changed careers because the old profession disappeared or stopped feeding you. You changed values because the ones you grew up with did not work. You changed relationships because you realized you were building them according to someone else's templates. And somewhere in this constant movement, a question arose that gives no peace. Who am I really? This is not a teenage existential crisis. This is a chronic re-evaluation of identity, characteristic precisely of this generation. Psychologist Erik Erikson described identity as the result of successfully resolving internal conflicts. But what happens when the external world changes faster than you can resolve one conflict? You start redefining yourself over and over again. Social media amplified this immensely. Instagram shows you hundreds of versions of who you could be. Other people's careers, other people's bodies, other people's travels, other people's families. And every time your brain launches a quiet, exhausting work of comparison. But here is the paradox. This very ability to rethink yourself is your greatest psychological asset. People who can rewrite their identity do not break, they adapt. They survive in any environment. They do not freeze in roles that stopped fitting them a long time ago. The problem is not that you change. The problem is when changes become an escape from yourself rather than a movement towards yourself. Ask yourself, am I changing because I am growing or because I am afraid to stop and look in the mirror? The fifth trait, emotional intelligence without a language for it. Daniel Goleman, in his book Emotional Intelligence, was the first to systematize research on how emotional intelligence affects a person's life more strongly than IQ. Especially important is his section on the gap between emotional perception and verbalization. This perfectly describes the pattern of the generation. I feel everything, but I do not know how to name it. You feel deeply deeper than most people around you are ready to admit. You feel the nuances in a conversation. You notice when a person says one thing but thinks another. You sense the mood of a room even before someone has spoken a word. But at the same time, and this is a key paradox, you often find it hard to talk about your emotions, to name them, to explain what is happening inside. Why? Because the generation born between 1980 and 1995 grew up at the intersection of two emotional cultures. The old one said, "Do not whine, pull yourself together, be strong." The new one started talking about psychology, trauma, vulnerability. But it arrived when your basic patterns were already formed. You absorbed emotional depth but did not get the tools to express it. The result? People of your generation often withdraw into themselves during moments of emotional tension. They have something to say. The words just run out before the conversation even begins. They feel everything, but there is no translator inside from the language of sensations to the language of words. Studies show that emotional intelligence is not an innate quality. It is a skill that develops through the practice of naming emotions. Psychologists call this affective labeling. When you give a name to what you feel, amygdala activity literally decreases neurobiologically. You already have the first component, the ability to feel. You just need to master the second, the ability to speak, not for others, but for yourself. The sixth trait. Fatigue from optimism and the search for the real thing. Martin Seligman, in his book Flourish with Thought Positive Psychology, shifting the focus from happiness to meaning. Frankl showed even earlier, a person can endure any conditions if they understand what for. Both authors describe exactly what the generation of the 80s to the 90s is intuitively moving towards. Enough motivation, give me meaning. You've seen it all. Posters saying follow your passion. Coaches promising transformation in 21 days. Books with titles like Think and Grow Rich, The Secret, The Power of Thought. You probably tried it, got inside, started, and at some point realized that it no longer works for you. You simply outgrew these promises. The generation born between 1980 and 1995 went through the mass industry of positive thinking and came out the other side with one clear request. Give me the real thing, not motivation, but meaning. These are fundamentally different things. Motivation is fuel, meaning is a direction. You can have a full tank and not know where to go. You can know where to go and find a way to get there even without fuel. Psychologist Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology, admitted at some point that focusing only on happiness is a mistake. True well-being is built on meaning, engagement, achievement, and connections with people. People of your generation intuitively felt this long before science confirmed it. You were the first to leave high-paying jobs that left you feeling empty, the first to rethink relationship models, the first to ask uncomfortable questions. Why do I need this? What does this mean? Where is this going? This is not infantilism, it is psychological maturity. Fatigue from empty optimism is a symptom not of weakness, but of honesty with yourself. You have lived enough to understand that a shiny wrapper does not make the contents real, and this knowledge is one of the most valuable things you have. So one world taught you to wait, the other to act instantly. You have both skills. You were deceived by beautiful prom ends, and you learned to see right through beautiful wrappers. You carry everything yourself because you know you can, but you are starting to realize that you do not have to. You changed yourself so many times that now you know how to be flexible where others break. You feel deeply and are finally learning to talk about it. And you are tired of empty words because you want the real thing. This is not a list of problems. This is a portrait of a person who went through a real ordeal and came out with a psychology that you cannot buy or get as a gift. You were shaped by chaos. And that is exactly why you know how to find order, where others see only panic. The last thing I want you to take away from this video is not a list of traits, not a diagnosis, not a label. I want you to walk away from here with one thought. What you considered your weakness was your adaptation. An adaptation is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a choice.